Welcome to the Diane McClay Show, empowering life through choice. Get ready to discover new perspectives, motivation, and balance through Diane's compassionate storytelling and insightful discussions. Whether you're feeling stuck and discouraged or curious and looking for more possibilities, Diane has your back and she's ready to take you on a journey of self-discovery and expansion. Choice is powerful, and so are you. The Diane McClay Show starts now.
Welcome in, everybody. This is Diane McClay on the Transformation Talk Radio Network, and coming to you a couple minutes late because we had some communication chaos going on in the background. We were just tempting the chaos gods with saying that it's crazy in all of our lives. We're sure that it is for you too. But what we know to be true is that you made the choice to be with us today. And what we always try to do on Fridays is try to help you empower your life through choice. So we're going to look at that little glitch as a way to restart. One of my favorite quotes by Henry Ford is that failure is the opportunity to start again more intelligently. So here we go. It's Friday. It's November 11th. It's Veterans Day. Thank you to everybody out there who is serving in our armed forces, both in the Canadian Armed Forces and the United States Armed Forces. We appreciate that you are making sacrifices for us and for the freedom that we strive to have in the Western Hemisphere. Also, it's 11/11. That's a special day for Trish Campbell, who is my guest today. She's my friend. She's an author. She's the author of Love Me, soon to be releasing a brand new poetry book following the Love Me path, and also Love Me meditation. So there's kind of a 3-pack trilogy that's out there. So let's get to it, Trish, as we always do. Let's at least acknowledge the sacrifices that other people have made before us. Why don't you go ahead and start with how you like to honor the people in your part of the world?
Yeah, thanks, Diane. Thanks for having me, first of all, and so happy to be here. And yeah, just want to acknowledge the land where we all settle. We're all settlers on this land, and for those that came before us, for their connection to Mother Earth, for their stewardship, and for their sharing their wisdoms, or their attempt to share their wisdoms over millennia, and honoring that even though there has been suppression of that they have, allowed that us that opportunity to operate our lives from the spaces in the land where we dwell now, and our businesses and everything that we have in our lives right now. Is, there's gratitude for those that came before us that have allowed us this opportunity. So for me, I will just name the lands, the treaty lands and territories: the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, the Ojibwe Chippewa, and the Huron-Wendat. And there's other unnamed territories, and we honor you and all that you have laid before us.
Yeah, thank you for that, Trish. And in my particular region, the Pacific Northwest, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, the Umatilla, the Nez Perce, the Chinook people, both the upper and lower Chinook people, and also the people that are unnamed. Let's just take a pause and remind ourselves that the names that we're sharing with you are the known, recognized names that the white government, that the federal governments of Canada and the United States have decided that it was okay to acknowledge. And we know that history tells us that there are many, many, many bands of people, tribes of people, nations of people who are no longer have the privilege of being recognized. So to those, we honor you, we appreciate you. We are doing our part, and it's not enough just to name you. But to not forget you is what our goal is. So I do my business from my home, and this was a major thoroughfare for a lot of the tribes that we just mentioned: major commerce, major economy, and our current economy today often follows the paths of the people who walked before us. So thank you for that. And I think it's important because we're coming into November, right? What's the next holiday on our calendar? Thanksgiving. That's a time when typically there's a really big misrepresentation of what that holiday was originally about and what it meant to the First Nation people and the Indigenous people of the Western region. So to pause and think that at the moment that we're feeling gratitude for a big meal, for a warm house, for family, for friends, to really put in the forefront of your mind that this was really at the sacrifice and the taking of the lives of other people. It was a very dark day in Native American history, dark period of time.
Yeah.
So as you're expressing your gratitude and your thanks, I would encourage people to also express their humility and their humbleness, and to open their mind to the other side of the story.
Yeah, I love that you just shared that, and I also wanted to say too, because that's a way that we can not, I mean, I love that we do this on the shift. We acknowledge the land, and you brought that into your show, and it's not just that, but it's about weaving it into our day to day, and that's an opportunity to kind of remember and acknowledge that some of the things that we were indoctrinated with might not be what the true reality is of that history, and to, like you said, it was a dark time. There's still trauma ongoing from that time period, and it's so interesting we're talking about this, because that, I mean, one of the things that in the process of writing the two books, Love Me, the original book, and it was really about my own healing journey and unlearning everything that at some point I'm like, was everything I was taught as a child a lie? Or, it was like I started questioning everything. So it's, allowing ourselves that opportunity to think beyond what we know already, and to, look into new perspectives, view it through a wider lens. And I mean, I know we talk about that a lot, you and I.
Yeah. Well, as humans, we have a tendency to want to whitewash pain, or to whitewash shame and
Mm-hmm.
disgrace and things that make us feel guilty. And whether it's on a political landscape or a personal landscape, if you've been fired from a job, I'll bet that's not the first thing that you put in your Christmas card when you tell everybody what's new in your life, right?
Right.
We find a way of thinning out the truth, one, to make ourselves feel more comfortable and feel more
Mm-hmm.
normal. We also are taught to do that, right? I can remember when I left my job, I was really ashamed that I didn't fulfill the expectation that I retire from this government agency after 30 years. I felt ashamed that I didn't rise on the ladder. And you and I've talked before, both on the show and about your book, that one of the chapters in your first book is you really talk about checking the boxes, right? Doing all the things that we're expected to do, and then be okay with it. But then we carry this shame and this guilt if we don't.
Right.
So we have a tendency to want to whitewash things, to ease our own conscience, to ease our own pain, to hide the disgrace or the shame or those negative feelings that aren't comfortable to put in front of a group of people. But reality is that you can only push that off for so long before it comes back to get you. And I want to tie that into kind of your Love Me journey. You've iterated the first book. That was really a healing project for you, and an expansive openness for other people to feel like they're not alone with some of the similar stories that you shared. So let's kind of jump in a little bit about the iteration of the meditation, which we talked about last week, and then also the iteration of the poetry. Like, why is that important for you to bring into the world today on 11/11? What's the messaging, and how do you feel like that can help other people with their Love Me journey and finding time for themselves?
Yeah, I think, why it's important is because we're walking around, like you said, we're checking boxes. And then, I got to a certain point in my life where I was like, who have I become? Like, who am I anymore? I kind of forgot who I was, because I was so busy making sure everyone else was okay with how I was living my life. And I think that that's a common theme, and a lot of people might have some similar parallels in their lives to, wanting to, like you said, we sugarcoat things. We don't tell people the whole truth because it's uncomfortable, because we've been brought up to only want to highlight the positives. And nobody wants to be like, we even gave it a name, and Debbie Downer or whatever. And it's like, but our human experience is human experience. It's a spectrum. And so the spectrum is good experiences, bad experiences, but even that is living on a binary. So then you break it down even further. It's like we're taught to live in this binary world where we have to constantly discern, is this good or is this bad? Is this right or is this wrong? Is this left or is it right? Is it, white or black, and all of those, like, divisions that ultimately, I think, pull us away from who we are, who we came in to be, who we came in to know we are. And then we, through that process of like be participating in the system that wants us to participate in it so badly, we forget our soul's purpose for being here, the plan and all of that. So I think like why it was important for me to share it, because to say, hey, life, we're not meant to be perfect. Our lives are not meant to, like, your job and getting let go, for example, like you had this dream and this was a dream, and it's valid that the feelings and emotions you felt around that. But also it's, us trying, what I ask myself and what I ask others to ask themselves is, are we trying to prove our worth? Because ultimately that's what I realized I was doing, there was a lack of self-worth at the bottom of it all. And then, so that was the motivation to do that self exploration back to my childhood, and to share it in the way that I've shared it, because I know I'm not the only one. Like my story might be the exact unique fingerprint of a story, but there's a lot of parallels people can draw, and that it doesn't have to define us. We don't have to carry that with us. So, and that's a big theme right now too, which I want to share later on if we have time, like energetically or astrologically.
Well, let's just dig into it now. I was going to interrupt you real quick and just ask if you had a piece of your poetry handy that we could tease our listeners with, one of your shorter pieces that kind of speaks to that concept of finding the self, or really letting the authentic, the authentic expression come out.
Okay. I mean, I just opened up to this, and this is actually on the back cover. Is it on the back cover? Yes. So I can read it real quick.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, because the thing is I want people to really feel connected to your words. I know I've been moved by them and motivated by them. But I feel like if somebody can hear the rawness of the poetry that you write, then they might be able to, connect that to some raw emotion that they feel in their life. Right. Rosita Perez and her guests prior to us were talking about, really, if you're going through divorce and you're separating an old identity and trying to recreate this new identity, one of the most important things is to really be honest with how you feel. And to really, I think, I can't remember who said it, but one of the ladies said, in our world, we tend to focus on action and result, and we tend to get steered away from feelings. And so your poetry,
so good. Yeah.
Your poetry really, I think, invokes a reader and a listener to really connect to a feeling.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think, and that's why it's so healing to write poetry, because it really connects to not only the feelings, but I really feel it's a direct connection to your soul. So, and this is perfect for that. It's called My Soul Speaks in Poetry, and this is from the prologue of Love Me. The soul speaks poetry, her mother tongue. Words have always echoed there, patiently waiting for their turn. Minutes, hours, days, weeks, years. Am I not enough? Am I too much? Masks to cover up, consumption to escape, to drown out the noise, but they're only temporary. I cannot hide from myself. My soul longs to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. The liberation of these words etched in my soul is like striking a match, igniting a spark, illumination of spirit, an eruption of light, divine expression, my truth, whole and free.
I get chills every time when I read your words. I get chills, and when I hear you read your words, I feel like my soul is stirred. I have things like liberation and freedom and igniting a spark and feeling alive again. Our listeners right now, ask yourself, do you feel alive? Do you feel like you're living freely? Do you feel like you're living the full, complete, authentic life that you were designed to lead. And if you're not sure, then contact Trish at thisistrish.com, right?
This is trishcampbell.com.
This is trishcampbell.com.
Yeah.
And if you affirm, yes, I am living in my life, then good on you. Keep doing that and share that light with people around you who may not be as courageous or don't know that they have the choices that you have. But if the answer is, I'm not sure, or no, I'm not, we're here for you. You're not alone. If it's not us, we have a strong network of people who can help you ignite, spark, liberate, feel, release, breathe, be. Trish and I have a strong network of people that we want you to live in the light. We want you to live wholly and freely and with strength.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not feeling like you're there for whatever reason, then reach out to us. You can find me at dianemcclay.com. You can find Trish at trishcampbell.com. But you're not alone. And this time of the year, going into the holiday season, sometimes those feelings of not being enough get accentuated because we're around our families and we're around the expectations and we're around the societal pressures, right? So as you're driving, as you're listening, and as you're coming home, just know that it's okay. Whatever you're feeling right now, the first step is to have awareness that you're feeling it. And once you have awareness, then you can create options on how differently you want to be. Trish, jump in on this.
Yeah, I want to say too that, yeah, we're here to support you in that if you need support, because I will say we have everything inside of us already to be live in our fullest expression. But sometimes we can't see it ourselves, and we need others that can fill those gaps for us. And that's where we come in. Like, one of the things I love about you, Diane, is like, and you always, this is your actions match your words, is like that you believe in people sometimes more than they believe in themselves. And you hold that belief, and you just see the light in everybody. So it's, and that's sometimes all we need is somebody to say, hey, I can see this. Like, you might not be able to see it now for yourself, but there is, it's there.
I think some of the most powerful words that I have heard from my coaches and from people in my inner close circle, and that I've also tried to emulate in my coaching path and in my storytelling, is to tell somebody with honesty that you can see them.
Yeah.
I see you, right? To be seen and to be understood as is, with all your faults and all your glory, is a pretty powerful place to be the holder of that vision for someone else. Is very motivating and empowering for me. But to be able to share with someone that I see something that they can't see, I'm here in this chair today because people saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And when that person says, I see you and I believe in you and I believe that you can get to this next place, let me help. I think we all as human beings are ridiculously unstoppable at that point. When we can get the right people in our corner at the right time, we can move the world. We can change the world. And I know that that's part of the journey. I mean, you're what, 2 years out from the original book, right?
1 year out. Actually, today is the anniversary of the release of Love Me, the original. So yes.
Well, happy anniversary. So what do you know today, a year later, now that the book is alive and breathing and it can be purchased and it's in people's hands and making a difference in the world? What do you know today, either about yourself or about your Love Me journey, that you didn't know when you started the book?
Well, I guess there's a lot. I mean, definitely putting this book out was like writing it and then putting it out, like both were healing in and of itself and growing and expanding and all the ways, and that continues. but I think, you know, and it's realizing a dream too, to have my book published and to, you know, see it on Amazon or see it on indigo.ca or see it in the bookstore at Indigo or whatever. But the real change, or the real, not change, the real impact is like the impact that it's made for people, what has come from people reading the book, that people are, you know, saying, hey, me too, or I feel this too, or this, like you were writing about me in this poem, or you know, Nadine Searle, I know, you know, Nadine, her and I, like, she started asking me questions, and we actually took it live and started talking about it live so that other people could, because she's like, I know that I'm not the only one either, that, and I've been this way, and, you know, kind of like sharing in a vulnerable way her own experiences, because I shared what I shared in the book about my own experiences. So I feel like we can go through our own healing process. So I guess that's one piece that I will say I've learned since putting the book out. We can go through our own healing process. We can read a book like this and say, I'm growing because I'm reading this. But the real growth happens when we take what we have read and share it with others. We talk about it. We have conversations. We have dialogue. I mean, that's why you and I like started our podcast, and why you have your show, is to talk about things, because that's where the real magic happens. That's where we transform, is when we're applying it, talking about it, discussing it, learning, listening, connecting, all of the things.
Well, and I
So,
want to tie this back into that word action, right? Because
yeah.
change really happens when we take action. It's great we think about things, that we talk about things, but the real change takes effect when we make a choice to go 1 degree different.
Mhm.
And so I want to jump into the meditation book that you and
Yes.
Robert Norton put together,
Do I
Robert
have
T.
that?
Norton, because
This one.
that's we talked about that on the last show, but
Mhm.
you guys really took the concept of moving from thinking about the Love Me journey to actually putting things in place in people's hands, very easy to use tools. So can you speak a little bit about the meditation book and why you feel like that's a really nice jumping step in between? It's a really good flow between the really big heavy book, the really good light poetry, and then I feel like the meditation piece is the action piece in between.
It is the action. It extracts the insights and the wisdom and the learning or the growth, and allows you to apply that in your life. So there's some of the meditations book is a book of prompts. So, and it was meant to spark contemplation, self-reflection, give yourself a moment of pause in the day, and really, you know, if you're, like we talked about at the start of the show, if you're looking for something more, if you're like just going through life and checking the boxes, okay, what's next, do all the time, this is an invitation to just be for a moment and really reflect on. And this, so it kind of takes the same, not the same journey as Love Me, but the themes are similar, and you could really use this like as an oracle. And each day, just like wherever it happens to land on, I landed on allow. Repurpose bricks is on the other page. So
Read
it's
aloud before we go to break. Share with our listeners allow, so they can get a taste of what that
allow.
invitation
Okay.
is.
Whatever arises in any given moment in your mental, physical, and spiritual body, allow it. Feel it all. Feel it to heal it. The negative experiences, the limiting beliefs, and our spectrum of feelings are all integral to our healing journey. Allowing our emotions to flow is an act of self-love. There's more to it, but do we have time?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple more minutes, so
Okay.
if you can finish it
So,
out,
yeah,
because I
so
don't want to leave an unfinished thought out there.
okay, so I'm sorry, it was just one of the longer ones. Allowing our emotions to flow is an act of self-love. Through our emotions, we can identify what it is we need in any given moment. Feeling our emotions is retrieving data. Analyzing that data is how we come to understand. Understanding what we need is how we know what is required to bring resolve, to learn, to grow, and to love ourselves. Allow.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful word, allow. If we ask ourselves, what are we feeling? And we allow ourselves to hear the answer. If we allow ourselves to express it and we allow others to hear it in its raw form, whether it's poetry or meditation or, angry words to the world, then what you're inviting people to do now is you've now brought something, a piece of awareness into your soul, into your mind, into your body, into your emotional and spiritual space. And once you have awareness, you can't not have it.
Right.
You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to let it go. You can choose to pretend like you didn't see it, but somewhere in your soul, it's going to know that you already know.
But yeah, your soul knows.
Right. And so then challenging your soul to do something a little bit different is where the courage and the bravery comes in. It takes a lot of choice and it takes a lot of courage
It
to
does.
move into a different direction.
It does, because we're so conditioned to believe that we're so conditioned to immediately suppress something if it's uncomfortable, if it's a negative emotion, if we feel like we're going to cry or something. It's like, and then we apologize for it. I've done that before because we're just so conditioned that negative emotion is not allowed, is not accepted. So allow is such a powerful word, and it's empowering.
And on that, we're going to leave people with the word allow. We're going to take a quick break and come back. My guest is Trish Campbell. She's the author of Love Me Meditations, and a really unique Love Me poetry book. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Welcome back in. I'm Diane McClay. You're on the Diane McClay Show, where every day we're trying to empower your life by choice. My guest is Trish Campbell, the author of Love Me Meditations, and Love Me Poetry. And real quick, if you're just joining us, I see you. I believe in you. And whatever you have going on in your life today, right now, I absolutely 100% believe that you have what it takes to get through it and be stronger on the other side of it. And so does Trish. So we're talking a little bit about putting yourself first. I titled the show, What About Me? And that title popped into my head because Trish and I were actually talking. She made a comment to me that her workplace has just done something unusual. They've actually, for the benefit and health of their employees, they have shifted to a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. So Trish, if you feel comfortable kind of highlighting that a little bit about how the workplace is changing, that would be awesome. But Trish joked and said, oh, well, that's great because I have 1 day a week now that I'm now going to call this as Trish Day. And so I was thinking how luxurious that is that somebody actually gets to designate a whole entire day to themselves to talk about what we're talking about, which is putting yourself first. Stop checking the boxes, rejuvenate the soul, rejuvenate the mind, let the spirit soar and fly, whether you write or paint or dance or walk or go visit nature. And so not everybody gets to have an individual day, but I did want to lead into some strategies and methods that you teach people and that you've also used yourself to really bring that self-care to a higher level. My question to our listeners real quick is, if you're not driving, don't stop, don't write, but think about the top 10 things that in your life right now that are your highest priority. Name them off to yourself. And when you get to 10, ask yourself if you're in any of those top 10 positions. I'll bet you, are you at 8, 9, 10? And where are you on that list? I'll bet most of you that are listening right now are not putting yourself in the top 10. So how can we, if we don't have a whole day to designate to ourselves, how can we start changing that system of always putting ourselves last and starting to put ourselves first so that we can thrive in our world and not just survive from day to day?
How can we? Well, I mean, first of all, I want to address the 4-day work week thing, which I think is like so amazing that there's a progressive company that I've been fortunate enough to align with, and be a part of. It's a nonprofit, and they are doing so much beautiful work and filling in gaps. And this is about walking the walk or walking the talk, like really, filling in the gaps in the communities that they serve, but also looking to change their own work-life balance or bring that back into balance and bring back in the humanity. So I think that's like, such a beautiful thing. And so what I meant by This Is Trish Day, that could be anything. I mean, it's self-care, but it's like giving myself that time to make the choices for myself and not living by somebody else's timeline. So, and I think that like one of the first things to remember, I think, I'm not sure if that was your question now, but in doing this, or why we should do this, I think is because like what I came to realize in my own I guess awakening and healing is that I wasn't like, where was my box wasn't checked out of all the checking of all the boxes. So, and again, I was living for everybody else's happiness, like making, as long as, like I said, if everybody else was happy with how my life was going, then I was okay. But then I felt empty, and then we're so, conditioned and taught like that it's selfish to put ourselves first. And you and I've had like several conversations about that. But I like to kind of like switch that narrative and say like, well, whether it's selfish or not, that word has its own connotation, but it's so important. It's the most important thing to nurture and nourish ourselves first, because we can't give 100% to anybody if we're not 100% to ourselves. So if we're not, full, we can't fill from pour from an empty cup, they say, and it's true. And so for me, and it's not like perfect. It's not, and I'm not always disciplined, but there's grace there. There's like no beating myself up for if I, forget, but there's awareness and saying, okay, I'm going to make sure that I make this time for myself, and to do things for myself that might even feel weird, or like, even, I never used to take baths, for example. And even something like as simple as that is like one of the most nourishing, like healing things, like ways I can show myself love and care, and just also breathe and pause for a moment.
Yeah,
So,
and
and you
my
feel
I'm going to
so
jump.
refreshed.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just feel so refreshed, and I feel like full again.
And I want to tie in on that, because in my show notes I put that, a bath is a great thing, but
Mhm.
it shouldn't come at the 13th hour of the
Right.
day or the 18th hour of the day as a way to just rejuvenate us just enough to get to the next day.
Mhm.
Like if our listeners are like, oh man, I can't even take a bath until 12:30 at night, and then I'm too tired to really enjoy it, and I'm afraid I'm going to fall asleep in the tub and get cold because I've done that, right? Then you have to make the choice to schedule that bath earlier in the day, and you have to put a sign on the bathroom. If you're a mom or a dad and you've got people that are banging on the door asking for this or that, you've got to say, hey, this is me time, and
Yeah.
this is a designated time that I'm going to allow, to use your word, allow myself to engage in this refreshing and soul-filling activity, whether it's a
Right.
bath or painting. We had a mutual friend who posted on Facebook the other day that they missed being in the pottery,
Mm.
the throwing pottery and touching the clay and creating something. And my comment back to that mutual friend was, you've got to make the time. If this is something that feeds your soul, you
Right.
can't squish it in at the end of the day. You have to say, this is important enough to me that I'm going to allocate time, and I'm going to allow myself to engage, and I'm going
Mhm.
to do, and then I'm going to refresh, and then I'm going to be able to serve the other responsibilities of my life in a much better way.
Right. And that goes like there, so you have to, have that, make that choice for yourself, but boundaries also come into play there, where there's constantly, like you said, let your family know, like, don't disturb me or what. So there's boundaries that you set with others, but then there's boundaries, your inner boundaries that say, I'm not going to budge from this commitment to myself. So it does take commitment. That's why I say sometimes, that may fall by the wayside, because we think, oh, well, okay, I can just rearrange my schedule and I'll get to it later, but then later never comes. So then we, so we may take a few times before we learn. And I'm, like I said, I'm human. We're all learning as we go. So, and because we're so conditioned to not focus on ourselves first, it's very easy for us to slide out of that. So it's a constant coming back to a practice, a regular practice, whatever that is, whatever feels good. And it could be something different every day. But I know for myself, if I'm not giving myself that time of self-care, and giving myself that space to breathe, then to breathe like metaphorically and physically, but then I'm not as stable navigating when life doesn't unfold the way that I expect things are going to go or whatever. Like and especially these last few years, we live in so much uncertainty. And so what has been an anchor for me is my practice, my spiritual practice, which is all the bath, the creativity, the writing, the artwork, the walking in nature. It's like, whatever it fills you up, whatever allows yourself to connect with your soul, I think is like one of the most important things you can do for yourself, and not just for yourself, but for everybody your family, who you're in a relationship with, because all of those relationships benefit when you're taking care of yourself first. That's
Yeah.
like what we kind of, want to switch the narrative on. It's not something that we only care. It's not that we only care about ourselves. It's that we need to operate from a full, strong foundation in order to love and nurture anybody else in our lives.
Right. And it's, we're speaking from a very enlightened part of our journey. It's taken us a long time to actually get these practices and get these,
Oh yeah.
these routines and this rhythm of dancing in and dancing out of, creating that space. But, if people are listening during their lunch hour, right, that's great. Uh, People that are working a 9 to 5 job, there's a reason why your employer gives you a 30-minute lunch break. Now, there's really kind of a funny dichotomy happening because, hey, get as much work as you can. And if you want to work through your lunch break, well, of course, we're going to let you, you know. I would encourage people to like literally step aside and say, I'm on my break and I'm not doing any work.
Yeah.
Take your lunch outside. We had a guy at one of my state parks that I worked at, and it was a well-known thing that Maynard, God rest his soul, he's passed for quite some time now, but he always had a book. And when he was on his lunch hour and his 15-minute break, he was at a completely different table. He was outside reading a book, and it was a rule. You do not go and talk to him on his lunch hour because he's reading. The reason why he removed himself from the employee break room, it was because at the employee break time, everybody was talking about work.
Right.
Everybody was talking about the project they were in the middle of, or the thing they
Yeah.
needed, or the problem they were having. So it really wasn't a break time. It was like snacks during work time. So that's
Mhm.
my first piece of advice to 9 to 5 employees. Take your breaks. You're not doing yourself any favors by not taking your break and working through. My boss used to say on his inbox, he said, my goal is to empty my inbox every day. And I said, you do realize as soon as you take one piece of paper out of your inbox, 3 more pieces of paper come in.
Yeah.
It's an infinite loop.
It's
have to
infinite.
draw a boundary around the things. Otherwise, the system, those boxes that you're checking, they erode a little bit and then a little bit and then a little bit more, to the point where suddenly you get burnout because you've worked a 10-hour day instead of an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
Or more.
And yeah, you know what? It's that self-abandonment gets rewarded. And that is part of the one of my realizations is like, we're constantly, which we don't realize in the moment, that that's self-abandonment when we're working through our lunch hours, when we're trying to get, answering emails at like 10 o'clock at night, from the workday, or trying to get ahead of the day, or, we're not really giving ourselves that. What we don't realize we're doing, because I've done it too. Like you said, it's not like we've always been this enlightened and so conscious of our self-care and pouring into ourselves or whatever. But it's like yeah, just trying to get ahead of the day, trying to prove myself to an organization that could let me go in a heartbeat. So I've learned my lessons about giving up parts of myself to that, parts of myself in a relationship, whether it's work, family, love relationship, whatever, and how that has impacted me. I guess what I was going to say was that we think we can physically get through, but we're doing huge damage to our nervous system, and that's where what we don't really, what I know myself, I didn't never really thought of before, like how much our nervous system plays a part in how we operate in our day to day, how whether we get sick or not, whether if how healthy we really are. And so I am so aware of that now, and so that now I can recognize when something kind of rubs my nervous system the wrong way. And
Right. Well, and that's why you're a Reiki master. That's why
yeah,
that's part of the practice that you do for yourself, but it's also a service that you provide for other people, is to just bring that nervous system back into
right,
balance, ask the nervous system to understand what harmony looks like rather than discord. As
yeah,
I mean, I love, and I want to repeat it. I love how you said that self-abandonment gets rewarded,
yeah,
right? For anybody who's listening, if you're not in the top 10 things that are your priority, you have abandoned yourself. Now, I get it. I'm not dissing on anybody who's a working mom, a working dad, holding down 4 jobs to get through life. I admire the grit that it takes for anybody that has multiple demands on their time to get through those things. I'm just saying, maybe it's a good time for you to start saying, is what I'm doing benefiting me, or is it benefiting someone else? And if it's benefiting someone else, then we need to ask a little bit more deeper question. Is there value in it benefiting someone else at my expense?
right.
Or do I need to retool this a little bit so that I'm not giving away all of myself while I'm taking care of this? Does that make sense the way I'm saying it to you, Trish? Does it sound
Yeah,
like a logical step?
I mean, yeah, and that's exactly one of the things I ask, I mentioned in my book, is what I ask myself, and sometimes I forget to ask myself this question: is this act an act of self-abandonment or an act of self-love? Like, and whether that's, so it's not about always, putting ourselves first in every situation, but it's about not abandoning ourselves at the expense of, like, we're shaving off parts of our life, because, like, without realizing it, we might think, oh, just this one time, oh, just this one time, but those accumulate. And then, like myself, I found, and it, not to mention, it builds like internal resentment towards somebody, something, someone, it's, so it's such a good opportunity, I think, and especially right now, and coming back to that, allow yourself, like, the time to just, even if you don't know what you want to do, just allow yourself the time to let it come to you. So whether it's just sitting quietly, and even if you don't have a meditation practice, like even just sitting in silence and allowing yourself to breathe and listen to your breath, and then, like, you're resetting your nervous system, and at that point. And so, coming back to that, I think that is one of the reasons why self-care and creativity and all of these things that kind of fill us up are so important, because they do that for us. Without, like, yes, going and working out and all of those things, like, that's good for our physical body, but I guess what I'm saying is, what I've come to learn is my spiritual body, my energetic body, is just as important as my physical body. And the
Yeah.
physical body is, like, impacted if there's a depletion of the energetic body, or of the spiritual body.
Yeah, and a good question for people to ask themselves is just, what is my body telling me? Right? And you don't have to be super knowledgeable, but if you're sitting at a desk typing all day, close your eyes and do a body scan and figure out where there's an ache or a pain or a
Hmm.
discomfort, right? if you notice, if you stop and say, what is my body feeling? Again, coming back to the feelings, not how is my body acting, but then I think you'll notice like, oh, there's a little pinch in my hip, or I need to roll my shoulders back a little bit, or I need to roll my neck. Your body's telling you that it needs something. You may not know exactly what it needs, but if you start asking the question and you start paying attention, you're going to develop a relationship on an energetic and emotional and spiritual level that often gets crowded out by the external noise. Right?
Right.
So if you can just ask, what's my body telling me? Where do I feel X, Y, or Z in my body? That's a start. That's half the battle. And the next
And
part is, if I don't like how I think we need to ask the question, do I like how I'm feeling? And if the answer is yes, I like how I'm feeling, obviously keep doing it. That's great. But if the answer is, no, not really, kinda, I wish it was different. Yeah, but if it's any of those iterations, then I think a really big thing is the next question is, how would I rather feel? And then what steps can I take to move in that direction?
And a lot of times, like, I think too, is not to immediately shut that feeling down, but to maybe explore it and then ask like how I want to feel and move through it rather than try to move around it, I guess is what my practice, or my practice is kind of, or I guess my experience is, yeah, it to not kind of trying to switch it right away, but to feel it and understand, because there's information there. So it's like, why
Exactly.
am I feeling this way? And not only that, but like going back to, like you said, if we're noticing what's in our physical body, because we don't always, like for myself, I never really, I don't know, like I kind of got in the mode of like tuning out what my body was saying to me, because I just want to produce. I just want to check the boxes and just get this stuff done. So I was going to say another word, but anyways, but it's really about, it. So what I was going to bring it back to is like a lot of times, like our experiences and in life or whatever are stored in our physical body too. So that is also an indicator of somewhere in our body that can maybe give us something to learn about ourselves.
And
And
that's
that's
one of
where
the
the
things.
Reiki comes in too, because you can't really think through that. You have to allow it to rise within the body and then feel the emotions, because usually what you're feeling, those tweaks and everything in your body are stored emotion.
Right. Yeah. A friend of mine sent me a video. So I had to put one of my beloved dogs down in end of
Mm,
August, little Daisy. And a friend of mine sent me a video on YouTube, and it was a dog with some cello music that was waiting for another dog. And the first thing she said is, I don't want to make you cry by
aw,
sending you this. And I didn't cry, but I tend to be one of those people. It's like, oh, it's a sappy video that pulls at my heart. And so I think that's a really good example, because what I responded to her is that I think that when we see a video or we hear a music or we hear a piece of poetry that invokes a deep emotion that makes us want to cry, I think that's grief that's actually gotten stuck somewhere deep
yeah,
down inside that we don't even know that it's there. And what I
right,
told my friend was, I'm actually, even if I did cry, I would be appreciative that you gave me something beautiful that allowed that to be released, or at
expressed
least
and
to
released, yeah,
expand a little bit. Maybe I don't get rid of it completely, but it's no longer got a firm foothold on that part of my soul that I didn't even
right.
know it was there.
Yeah, you just touched on something so huge. It is like that little, it's not always what is happening in the moment that is the emotion that's being triggered. It's what's underneath that, like you said. And usually that's unexpressed grief, or unhealed grief, or processed grief. And so those, again, coming back to the allow, it's like there's the invitation to allow whatever emotion comes up in any given moment, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, um, and and let it come up, because that gets, otherwise we say, oh, so you get this something that conjures an emotion and you kind of like stuff it down. You can only do that so much, and then it's going to come out at a disproportionate time. It's going to come out at the wrong person or whatever. That's why it's like the work that I do, and especially around Reiki and helping people through healing their trauma and wounds from their childhood or throughout their life, is so important, because we're carrying that around and it's unexpressed, unprocessed, like you said. Even, people are afraid to make us cry. Well, why is that?
Yeah.
It's natural. It's a natural emotion.
To me, it's like if I see a sappy movie and I cry, it's telling me a couple things. Either there's something there that's unhealed, or there is a really deep part of my soul that is being touched by that song or that play or that video that doesn't get fed in my everyday life.
Right.
Like I see crying in a movie as a way that a really deep part of my soul gets to get a little massage. It gets a hug, it gets to be held, and it gets to hear me say, I see you.
Right.
So I don't want to forget. I really want to make sure, especially because the Christmas holidays are coming up, how can people get these books? How can they send them to their loved ones and their families? And more importantly, how can people work with you, especially if they're carrying some trauma, if they're carrying some emotional ambiguity, if they're not sure what we're talking about with any of this, taking care of self thing.
Right. Okay. So this book, Love Me, is out now, Amazon worldwide. It's on Indigo. It's on Barnes and Noble. Indigo is in Canada, by the way. And or you can get signed copies through me. And Love Me Poetry is set to release on 11/22/2022, which is in 11 days. I'm so excited about that. So there'll be more details to come on my Instagram at This Is Trish Campbell. And then Love Me Meditation is set to release around Valentine's Day in 2023. The Valentine's Day gift for yourself. For your partner,
instead of somebody else.
Or somebody else too, but for themselves.
Right.
So, and then how you can work with me, you can check me out on my website, get in contact with me there. This is trishcampbell.com. And also monthly, I co-host a Zoom session with my good friend, and Nadine Searle, Calmer Self. And we have been doing these group healing sessions that have been so beautiful. And it's a way to experience, what healing is in a group setting, and then that can lead to us working one-on-one. So
excellent. And this is one of the most beautiful things I think you can put into the world, is that you have that embodiment, you have that ability to just invite people to be real and to be authentic and to be seen. So I really, really appreciate that about you all the way through.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to give you a minute to give the closing words. Like, what's the last thing you want people to know on today, 11/11? And as we move into the holidays, what's the parting thought?
Yeah, I would say allow is like, I'm so glad that came up and it wasn't planned, but allow whatever is to just like unfold the way it's unfolding. We talked about it before we started the show, that, to let go of how things needing to look a certain way. And it's all ultimately carrying us to our greatest version of ourselves, or our next greatest version of ourselves. So especially in these energies right now, between now and 11/22, these next 11 days, it's kind of an energetic portal where it's just a powerful time right now. We're in the middle of a collective shift and an individual shift for each, for individual, on the individual level. So just allow your soul that journey.
Beautifully said. I'm your host, Diane McClay. We're going to have to close this episode for now. Thank you for allowing us to come into your life, for allowing us to share our message with you, and for allowing our words to sink into your heart and into your soul. Trish Campbell is my host. I'm Diane McClay, The Diane McClay Show. We'll see you in 2 more weeks.
Thank you for listening to The Diane McClay Show, where you are empowered to enact change in your life through choice. You know that little voice in your head that's been telling you to pursue that passion project? Or maybe it's been screaming for you to go outside and explore the great outdoors. That voice is you, and you deserve to be heard. Listen, make a choice, make a change, and watch yourself grow. For more information about Diane or to work with her personally, visit DianeMcClay.com.